This video is based on audit sampling risk. The standard on auditing, International Standard on Auditing 530 audit sampling, and the ICI's issued standard on auditing SA 530. So I'm going to talk about sampling risk and how it impacted the exit polls, how it impacted the conclusions that were drawn on 3rd June by the market, and what was the aftermath. So it is just a topic which links to the real life. So I just thought maybe I can share this up. So moving to the next slide. So theoretically, what is audit sampling risk? So audit sampling risk as defined under the international auditing standards and standard on auditing by the ICI is the risk that the auditor's conclusion based on a sample may be different from the conclusion if the entire population were subjected to the same audit procedure. So the clear idea is if we considered the 100% of the of the population to the same audit procedures, the conclusion would have been different from whatever the sample was. So the fundamental problem with the sample is the conclusions drawn are wrong because the sample drawn is wrong. So when is a sample wrong? The sample is wrong, particularly when it does not represent the population. The sample should represent the majority of the key identities of the population. Otherwise, the sample would not be a clear or fair representative of the population. A sample should be a fair representative of the population in order to be a good sample. What would it mean theoretically? Theoretically, it would mean the standard deviation of the sample and the mean of the sample should be somewhat that of a population. And what you would do is you'll do a hypothesis test such as a t-test or a student t-test or even normal distribution test to identify whether it is in the range of a particular significance. So that is a technical point. In the real world, what you would do is you would stratify the sample as much as possible. So you have the idea of every type of person that is in the sample. So that is in relation to the exit polls. Moving on, what is the risk? So risk would lead to errors or conclusions being wrong. So what are the two error conclusions, the erroneous conclusions drawn from sampling risk? So first is this type 1 error, which impacts the efficiency of the audit but not the auditor's opinion. How does it impact the efficiency? So let's say you draw a sample for test of controls and you determine that the controls are not operating effectively. So what is your conclusion? That you may need to increase the test of details in order to fight against the risk of material misstatement arising from the control risk. So what you would do, you would try to decrease the detection risk by increasing the substantive procedures. So in this case, what you would do is more substantive procedures means more laborious work. You will need to check more vouchers, more invoices, more reconciliations, more field work on the audit. That means the efficiency of the audit goes down. So it impacts the auditor's pocket, that is the cost of the auditor. But the type 2 error is really when the auditor makes an error in the sampling, which leads to an overall impact on the effectiveness of the audit, which is the conclusion of the audit. Let's say you draw a sample of invoices for sales and you draw 15 samples based on high value or haphazard method. So you draw the conclusion that the top 15 invoices are not materially misstated and therefore the revenue figure is fairly stated. But the fact that the other other invoices, let's say below the 2 lakh limit, there were a lot of invoices which were materially misstated or forced or maybe a bogus revenue. So it would mean that the revenue figure which was actually materially misstated has not been properly audited or the risk was not properly addressed in the sample and therefore a wrong conclusion has been drawn. The same could happen with the test of control, that when you do your test of controls, you may conclude that the controls are working fine when in fact they were not working fine. So what you would do, you would skip a lot of substantive procedures in which you would actually identify the misstatement at the assertion level and therefore miss out on an effective audit. So let us look at the exit polls. The exit polls for the 2024 elections were out on about 3rd June. So these were the exit polls by majority of the large exit polls that were conducted by media houses. And you can see the mean and median of these exit polls, that is 377 for the NDA or 383 the median, and for the India Alliance that is 153 and 161, while for the others we don't care. So there were some errors in the sampling which would be evident by the today's 4th June's results. The NDA received around 290 seats, and the India Alliance received around 230 seats. So that was about one third off from what is the actual result. So your sampling, if it is too variant with the actuals, there is a risk that the sample is not true representative of the population, and therefore you may need to redraw the sample. That is as per the ISA 530 and the standard on auditing by ICI, that is SA 530 as well. So there are errors in the sampling because of maybe you have not stratified the sample enough. Maybe you have done haphazard sampling. The haphazard sampling, of course, when a person uses their professional judgment to draw samples without any basis for such conclusions, or a non-stratified approach, which would mean the population has not been disaggregated enough to identify similar pieces of population which represent a similar criteria, such as a seat in the UP would not be same as a seat in Madhya Pradesh. So therefore, the sample should be stratified seat-wise, and you should obtain evidence seat-wise from different sects of the people from different parts of the region to understand whether the sample gives a true representative of the actual population which is being tested for the elections. So the exit polls gave a very favorable position for the previous government, and the markets reacted very positively. On the 3rd of June, the Nifty opened up about a gap up of 2.5%, about 700 points above 700 points. And secondly, today, when the actual results were announced, it was a mayhem. The markets really had an impact on the conclusions drawn from the sample. So the actual problem posed was the exit polls, which were impacting the conclusions drawn by the investors in the market. So there was an impact on the conclusion. Why? Because the samples showed a positive pictures of the exit poll of the actual of the election, while the actual election showed a different picture. So this could lead to a lot of problems. So of course, this was a loss of capital today. But when we consider the same in audit, when an investor, a user of the financial statement, maybe a lender, maybe the government, maybe the tax authorities, they rely on the auditor's opinion about various things, and they prefer to the true and fair opinion that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. They write this in their opinion paragraph, and the people rely on it. But they draw different conclusions because the financial statements might be materially misstated due to a risk that the samples were misleading. So the sampling risk is actually the risk faced by the auditor due to a detection risk. It is a part of the detection risk. It is not part of the risk of material misstatement. It is the part of the auditor's risk. So the sampling risk has to be tackled by the auditor in order to be a professionally competent auditor. So I guess that is all for today. This is a very great integration of finance, statistics, politics, and auditing. Uh, and I guess you found this video helpful. The data used in these slides, both of these slides, that is, first one was the exit polls, and this is the market data. The source to data has been quoted in the slide, and you may want to refer to the websites, and please don't at me for the wrong data if it was ever quoted here. And I hope you found this video useful, and thank you.